Good morning, baseball fans, and welcome back to Dan's Vintage Baseball PC. Do not, I repeat, do not be fooled by that fancy name. It's just me and some friends talking about baseball cards. And today, very special show about Smoky Joe Wood. And we're going to bring in a few minutes, our friend Doug, who is one of the nicest gentlemen I've met in the hobby and who did such a solid favor for me at the National that kind of cemented that this show was actually going to take place. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Anyway, Smoky Joe Wood, born in Pennsylvania to a family who had a very large farm in Northeast Pennsylvania. His father was a bit of an oddball, smart guy, but a bit of an oddball, moved him around the country. He was a millionaire in Chicago, and then he was destitute in Kansas. But what happened was Joe Wood was proved to be an outstanding baseball player in the late 19th century. Oddly went on to play for a girls team for a little while. And then he got scouted, ultimately went on to play for Boston. We'll see his stats, and well, let's look at them now. His stats, there we go. As you can see, born in Pennsylvania, buried in Pennsylvania. Actually, he was born in Kansas City. Huh, okay. So he went to high school, did not graduate from the University of Kansas, but went on to play, made his debut in a year that I can't read, 1906, I think. Anyway, he went on to be a star pitcher for Boston, hurt his arm, didn't play for a year, and then was traded to Cleveland to be with his friend, best friend almost, Tris Speaker, and went on to become an outfielder. So we'll get into that in a little bit. So let me bring on our friend and yours. This is Doug.
Morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great.
So that may be the worst bio I've ever done because there's so much to talk about. So I wanted to kind of sprinkle the bio throughout the many cards. We've got a lot of cards to go through, so let's not spend time me talking about how bad my bio was. But anyway, so in terms of your bio, I always ask my guests your history of collecting, ultimately how you got into collecting this particular individual player, and some experiences that we'll talk about as we go through the cards that you think would be nice to talk about right up front.
So my background on cards started, as usual, with most of the community. As a kid, I started Little League in 1969. I remember going to the canteen between games, and we would buy some baseball cards. And that was my first introduction, opening some 1969 Topps packs. At that point, I hadn't started collecting. I hadn't really got the bug for it. I've always been a collector. I have the collector gene, but I really didn't start collecting, try to put together a set until 1971, and then I was hooked after 71. I put together a 71 Topps set many years later when it was much easier. This was still pre-internet. It took me 7 years to put together a 71 Topps set. And this was in the early to mid 80s, before internet. So it was a little rough. But yeah, opening packs just really got me hooked into baseball.
And yeah, I know about 71. I did build it, but I built it after the internet. Well, I built half of it before and half of it after, but those high numbers are tough. So Joe Wood, now you're an Indiana guy. He's not an Indiana guy, right? I mean, he's a Western guy, but he's a Boston and Cleveland guy.
Yes.
So go ahead.
So what got me was as a teenager, I was probably 12, 13, 14. A buddy of mine had the book. His father had Glory Other Times book. And I thought, well, shoot, I like history. That's one of my favorite subjects in school. I like baseball. I hadn't really got into vintage baseball cards at the time. I never really seen them. I read the book, was just fascinated with all the characters in the book from that turn, the turn of the century. But Joe Wood stuck out to me, that somebody other than Babe Ruth would be a fabulous pitcher and then become a really, really good utility outfielder for another championship team. And from that point on, Smoky Joe Wood, Rube Marquard, um, and a few others from the book just really stood out to me. And so that's, yeah.
Glory of our times for our viewers that aren't familiar with it, which might be zero. But anyway, the book was published in, I believe, 1964. The author went around interviewing players from the dead ball era. Some of them were stars, some of them were obscure, and put together a pretty nice package of a presentation of how the game was back in that time. What's great about it is it's all first-person accounts of guys who were still alive at that point. And what was also great is that he recorded all these interviews, so you can actually catch audio. I will link down below a link to the Joe Wood audio, which I have listened to this week in preparation for this. Fascinating and quite entertaining gentleman.
Oh, yes.
In his very older days. But 1964 was not the end of Joe Wood. Joe Wood lasted for, I believe, if you lived to the age of 95.
Yeah, in 1985 he passed away.
Yeah. So he actually went on for, and let's go through his we'll pull up his stats first. But he comes to the Red Sox. He's a very good pitcher, and then in 1912 he's literally the greatest pitcher on the planet, having bested Walter Johnson in a game I believe in September.
Right, of 12.
And then they go on and win the World Series, and Joe Wood wins 3 games in the World Series, including, I believe, coming in relief in Game 7.
Correct.
His 1912 Red Sox beat the Giants in, I think, it went 8 games because there was one tie. I mean,
yeah, it's a little odd. Yeah, that is a weird stat.
And Game 7 is the game where Snodgrass dropped the ball in center field and became another one of the Giants' goats that lived, goat in the old fashioned, which means a guy who blew the game.
Right.
They had
at least he got blamed for it.
Yeah, Merkel and Snodgrass, and have both of their T206 cards. But anyway, so Joe Wood, he talked about in the interview how he threw as hard as he possibly could, and he paid the price.
He did. He didn't really have later in his career in the seasons of like 13, 14, and 15, when he was really struggling pitching because of the arm injury, he developed some other pitches. I mean, he had a decent curveball, but back in the day, they were pitching 9 innings, and he was just flame throwing all 9 innings.
So he like you mentioned, he had a couple of decent years, but not the kind of year he had in 1912. And then ultimately, he couldn't pitch anymore. He was sold to Cleveland, where he, I think he tried to pitch and he just couldn't. And then Speaker and he decided that he was a pretty good hitter. And we'll see when we go on to his hitting stats. Even as a pitcher, he was a pretty good hitter.
Yeah, he was a pretty good ball player.
Became an outfielder. So there's batting stances. This I've done. How many videos have I done on players so far? This is the first one where I had to put up both his pitching and hitting stats instead of just hitting or pitching.
Right.
But you can see he had some good seasons. As you mentioned, a utility player. He had 400 and some odd at bats and 500 in his last season, but sort of smaller at bats in the early seasons. But if you look, he's 283 career hitter. That's pretty good.
Yeah, pretty decent. And I think was it 1921? He batted like a 366 clip for the season.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. He and then he batted 297 his last year, 1922, as a 32-year-old. And then he went on to coach. he was the coach of Yale University from the mid-20s until the mid-40s, and actually, or early 40s, and actually ended up coaching his son at Yale. And his son went on to make a very brief appearance with the Red Sox, and I believe it was 44. But Joe Wood lived in right off the campus of Yale for many years, even after he was done coaching. And is famous. He's not famous, but he was present at one of the most famous college baseball games of all time, which would be Yale against St. John's in, I believe, 81.
Right.
Future pitching stars and future teammates on the Mets, Ron Darling and Frank Viola. Darling, I think, threw an 11-inning no-hitter, and Viola was pitching a shutout against him, and ultimately St. John's ended up winning that game, I believe.
I believe so.
And then Joe Wood had I think he's in the Red Sox Hall of Fame, and he had a ceremony when he was like 90 years old at Fenway Park. So lived a very long, very interesting life, and has a lot of cool cards that you have that we're going to get into. But first, as we always do, get into my card. And the great thing about this card is that you, sir, are primarily responsible for me owning this card. So,
I was glad to have found that for you.
So I have mentioned this. I mentioned this in my national video, but you and I sat with Jason from Cards and Comics. It was the last day or my last day. I think it was Saturday. And
my last day too.
I was exhausted and out of money. So we just chatted about cards, 3 guys from 3 different areas of the country, all having just one thing in common, and that's cards. And it was a great conversation, and really enjoyed it. We were looking at some of Jason's cards, and then you and I started talking about Joe Wood, and I had mentioned to you before that I wanted a Joe Wood card with Boston, and I had owned a Cleveland card, which we'll get to because you have it, some years ago, and always regretted selling it. I made money on it, so it wasn't the worst thing financially, but it was not good for my collection. It's probably the single card that I regret selling the most. So you personally, sir, took me around to 3 different dealers.
Oh, I definitely had the Joe Wood radar on at that show.
And there was one that it looked like a good price and a good card, but I just couldn't pull the trigger on it because there was a print mark right down the right side of it. And then you took me to Dan McKee, who is a dealer who I saw in Philly. Didn't buy anything from him, but entertaining gentleman nonetheless. And I got this for a price which you, sir, had previously negotiated. So,
well, I have owned this card before, and it's just one of them that I didn't really care for too much. And there was a lot of other cards, Joe Wood cards, that I was pursuing at the time. And I thought, well, I see that one come up a lot. And this was, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I thought, well, I'll just pick it up at another time. But it has been getting tougher to find.
It's the E91-C, I believe. It's a C because there's an A, B, and a C of this. And the reason why you may not like it is because the American Caramel Company used pretty much the same drawings for multiple different players.
Yeah, they did the E91-A and had all new drawings, and then they used the same picture drawings for the next 3 sets. So if you look back through A, B, C, and D, all the pictures are the same.
Yeah, I have Larry Doyle from this set who looks suspiciously very much like Joe Wood.
Yes.
So, that being said, Larry Doyle was his opponent in the 1912 World Series. Larry Doyle was the 1912 MVP in the National League, and was on that Giant team that he beat. So having both of them in the same set is kind of cool.
That is neat. Yeah.
So is this a Joe Wood rookie card?
It is sometimes, yes, it's very early for Joe Wood. He has some other cards from the 1909, 1910 sets, but very few. So yeah, a lot of people consider this his one of his early cards.
Okay. And I should mention that I purchased it raw, and you and I had agreed that it would probably be in the range of 1.5 to 2, 2 being an outside shot. And thankfully, it got the 2, which made me feel really good about the price that I paid for it.
It's amazing looking at it right now, slabbed in the SGC tux holder, how much better that card looks now than it did in hand raw.
Yeah,
it does.
Well, you're wearing the SGC hat, so I think you and I both are SGC fans. So
big fan.
So let's start with your collection because we got to get through a lot. This is the first card, and it's a Hutchinson team card, or it says Hutchinson on the.
Right. He played for the Hutchinson, Kansas, and they were kind of like a single A baseball team for Kansas. And this was after his stint with the Bloomer Girls.
Right.
And that's kind of how he got his recognition, was playing with the Bloomer Girls. And he played on a local town team, and they played the Bloomer Girls, and he stood out. And that's kind of got how he got noticed.
and then he got offered, and I know this from listening to his Glory of Our Times audio recording, is he got offered money to travel with the Bloomers because they would have a ringer or two on the squad. Sometimes a man wearing a wig, but Joe Wood was very, very adamant that he did not wear a wig.
Correct. Yeah, very adamant.
Anyway, so here we go. Okay, there he is pitching. I know the one on the right is the Sporting News. The one on the left is Max somebody postcards.
Yeah, it's a Max Stein postcard. He was a producer of books, and he also made postcards of notable people in that time. Since the 1912 World Series had the Giants and Boston, they did quite a few Boston and New York Giant postcards. They're pretty rare. They used the photography of a guy named Francis Burke, who was really big into baseball photography at the time.
Okay, so as we talked about before we went live, this is one of my favorite sets, and it's gorgeous pictures. The back is pretty cool, and somehow or another, you got a 7 on a card that's 100.
I was very patient because that was 9 years into the making of waiting for that card, the right card to come up, and it wasn't cheap, but to me, it was well worth it because this is probably the prize of my collection. It's a high number from that series, which they made very few of. Trish Speaker is also in the high number series, and they are very, very tough to come by.
Yeah, viewers may remember that I have purchased within the last 6 months or so the Addie Joss from this set, which was a bargain compared to a similar grade if it was a T206. But this, as you said, is a high number, and it's a 7, which is an unheard of grade in this time frame. And I priced out. I looked at this after after you sent me the photos. I went in to try to see because I'm like, wow, this is an amazing card. I love the color. It's got that sort of like burgundy shirt, and he's got the collar, and he looks very studious in this photograph. And I said, wow, this is a great card. So I'm gonna go check. And I saw the numbers for like a 2 or a 3, and I'm like,
if I'm not mistaken, it's a Carl Horner photograph.
Uh-huh.
A very famous baseball photographer at the time.
Awesome. Now this is another fantastic picture.
Yeah, I like the cardigan sweater. Looks like he's kneeling down to take a ground ball.
Is this well, actually, what year is this? 12. So
Yeah, this is 1912.
this predates Fenway Park. Whoa,
I believe this is Fenway.
you just zoomed in on us.
Oh, my bad.
Whoa,
I don't know what happened there.
crazy photography. Okay. Um, Boston Daily Postcard. Yeah, great picture.
Let me see if I can fix this. No one wants to see that ugly mug up close like that. The Underwood and Underwood, that's I had seen that on Net 54 boards. An individual owned it. And
Underwood and Underwood is this guy right here. Okay.
right. And I can't fix the video. I don't know. It's got a mind of its own. So I'd seen this card on the Net 54 boards, and I had contacted the individual, and he said, "Yeah, I doubt that I'll ever really sell this card." I said, "Well, keep me in mind if you ever decide to sell this. Get a hold of me." He got a hold of me and said he's thinking about selling it. I made him a few offers on it. We couldn't come to an agreement. He said, "I think I'm just going to put it in the REA auction." I said, "That's fine." He had the Christy Mathewson from the set also. I said, if you put it as individuals, I can just go ahead and bid on the wood. And I offered him a really, really nice price. Actually, I offered him more than what I end up winning it in the REA auction. So I felt very fortunate.
Even with the buyer's premium?
Even with the buyer's premium.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
well, bad decision by him because he had to pay to put it in there.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Oh well.
Yeah. So I felt really fortunate to have got that postcard.
So Net 54, I know you have a running thread there where you're looking for Joe Wood cards and people posting some, examples, maybe not for sale, but things that you might need. So how has that been for you in terms of grow your collection?
It's been great, and it's put me in over the years. Put me in so much contact with other collectors. Not unlike YouTube community, same thing. I've made a lot of friends, and Joe Wood is kind of under the radar a little bit, although his cards have really shot up in price over the last 7 to 10 years. But I've come along across quite a few cards on the Net 54 boards.
He's as we know, not a Hall of Famer.
Correct.
Although there's a good argument for him to be one. But his cards sell like he was a Hall of Famer. I mean, he sells more than some of the other guys who are Hall of Famers from that era. Some of the more obscure guys, like, I don't know, Bancroft and Wallace and guys like that. Joe Wood is much more.
He's pretty popular.
So
it all comes from the book.
Right.
I think it's endeared a lot of fans from that book.
Right, and he stayed around the game too, which always helps.
Right, and he signed a lot of autographs. He was really friendly.
Yep.
He did a lot of sports card shows. Did a lot of events, that type of thing.
Yep. And so here we have a Boston Daily postcard.
This
beautiful one.
Yeah, this is the same. Came from the same collection as the 1912 Underwood and Underwood postcard. The same individual owned it. I had been talking to him for, I don't know, 6 or 8 years, and he decided that he was going to do the same thing. He was wanting to let loose of it. I told him I was interested. I made him an offer. I guess he didn't learn his lesson. He put it on REA boards, and I bid it up, and it was still cheaper than what I had offered him.
Wow.
I mean, not by much, but
I mean, don't make the same mistake twice. so, so this one is the 1912 World Series team postcard. We talked about this a little off camera. I'm sort of weirded out by the giant head in the front, who I didn't know who it was, and you told me was the manager.
Right. Yeah, it's an odd photograph. It's really popular though, and it was done on quite a few. I think probably, from what I know, it's like 3 different cards, and it also showed up in a lot of advertisements at the time.
It's a little more ordinary photograph of the
Right.
1912.
Right. Yeah, this is from the World Championship. This is a real photo postcard, which are a little tougher to get, and even the postcard collectors all go after the real photo postcards. So they have a Kodak shiny gloss film to them, but they are real susceptible to cracking also. Kind of like some of the T200 Fatima cars. They have that same coating on it and they crack really easy.
We'll get to Fatima in a few seconds, but one question. So Speaker is on this team, Tris Speaker, and obviously popular Hall of Famer. Do you pay up for something like this because Speaker's on it?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a little more, then it also has, Heilman and Hooper. So, he has some decent Hall of Famers on there, but Speaker is what drives the 1912 postcards of the team. Yeah, this was a tough one too.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, I priced this one out recently, and certainly not a 5. I could not afford the 5, but I priced this out recently at a low, a 2 or something, and I couldn't believe how expensive it was.
Yes. It's a very difficult card to find in this condition. It took me quite a while to find one. Actually, there are tougher cards. There's some backs, recruit little cigar backs that have different factory numbers on it also. I think this one is a factory 240, and there is another factory which they made quite a few less of. I think it's 605 factory number, which you rarely ever see, but there's really no premium for it. My OCD kicks in sometimes, and I know that when I look at these factory numbers, this one's probably 3 to 1 to the other factory number, but someday I'm going to try to track down the other factory number.
Are there other cigar backs for this?
I believe I have never seen one, but I think there's a possibility that there could be.
Because I do have a T2. This is 7. Yeah, I have a T207 with a is it Cycle? I think
Correct.
Yeah. Cycle back. It's
the cycle backs are quite a bit tougher. Now, only certain cards from the series were made cycle back. I know one of the real popular ones is the Loudermilk from the set, and he's extremely tough to find.
So you also pay up for this one because of Speaker too.
Again, yes, unfortunately. I think, for a long time, I was unwilling to pay up for the Speaker included. I just wanted the Joe Wood. And a lot of times back in the day, 10, 15 years ago, you could find the end cards separated.
Yeah.
But you could never get them graded.
Right.
You can only keep them raw. So that kind of changed my mind. If I wanted to have some stability in my collection and have it in an SGC holder, I was just going to have to pay up and then go ahead and get the Speaker.
So you have 2 of these. Are these the 2 that exist? This is of course, the Hassan triple folder. And then there's a second one, which is also a wooden speaker, but a different picture.
Middle panel. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one's called rounding third and one's close at third. In the middle picture is the only thing that's different.
Is this Wood's only cards in this set?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now Tris Speaker has cards with another player,
right,
besides Wood, but Wood is in tandem with Tris Speaker on both cards.
That's close at third, and this one is rounding third. Yeah. And I love the backs on these.
There's also a red letter back version.
Interesting.
That you occasionally see.
So I can tell by the size.
It's a pretty good size card. I have it right here just to show what it looks like.
Whoa, you got your ear there.
Yeah, we're gonna have to fix that. I may have to, but you can see the size of it. It is.
Yeah,
it's pretty good size.
I have a few of these. SGC inexplicably gives you a ton of black space on these.
Yeah, I know.
Is Hires root beer with the tab on the bottom that I have of Newcomb, and the card itself is even smaller than this, and there's just so much black space.
Yeah, they have a tendency to do that. Yeah,
and they did the same thing on a I have a Dickey 39 Dickey the Gaudi Premium, and then I just bought I'm not going to show it, but I got the Gomez, and they used a smaller slab for the Gomez. Same card, same size card, two different size slabs. But anyway, so what do we have here? This is an
oddball one here. Like I said, the size of it makes it incredibly bulky, of course. This is called the Technical Book Publishing Company Boston Red Sox card. It was an oversized postcard, and it's also a real photo postcard. And on the back of it, it has a scoreboard where you can keep score of the game. So it was, yeah.
Did you send me the back? I don't know.
I don't think I did.
No. Is the score? Did somebody actually try to keep score? Is there any writing on it?
No writing on it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see this or not, but
yeah. Let me see if I can get you a little better. Yeah, no writing.
There we go. So a little
and
awkward.
What year is this?
1912.
This is 12 also. Okay.
Right, yeah.
And this is the 1913 national game.
Correct. Yeah, some of those I just loved this condition of this 5.
Yeah.
I was going to pay up for an 8, but it was like double the price, and I really couldn't tell the difference between the nice 5 and this and an 8. So I went with the 5, and I'm going to save my hobby dollars for another card.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if it's centering, because the word batter sort of causes the centering to be off a little bit. So this may actually be centered.
I think it has a little bit of a tilt, just a tad bit of a tilt.
Yeah, but for a
but
5,
not enough to mess with my OCD.
For a 111-year-old card, for that to be a 5 is pretty good. But I'm glad you saved it. So here's the Fatima we were talking about. 1913. You're right. This has Hooper and obviously Speaker again. That's your pay up. But I don't have a Fatima. I've been actively trying to get a Fatima card of Cincinnati.
Okay.
Because it's cheaper, and it also has the first 2 Cuban players that ever appeared.
Correct. Yes.
On the card.
Yes.
And so, where'd you get this one? Do you remember?
I just bought. This was the only card that I bought at the Cleveland Nationals.
Oh.
And I think I bought it after we had our conversation.
Oh. Okay.
I bought it towards the end of the show, and I went over to the far side where I hadn't been too much, where the SGC is over that way on the backside, and just happened to run across it.
Nice.
I'd been looking for one for quite a while, but when you get into the 1s, 2s, and 3s, sometimes because of the finish of the card, they can have some crackling and not be real attractive. But this one was really pretty.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of 2.5s or numbers that are moving up away from ones and 1.5.
Yeah, that's a pretty typical grade for that because
Yeah.
of the surface.
And you get a nice back on the left. It's got a little staining from it, but that's, I mean, again, it's a 111-year-old card. Now, what the
Correct.
fan? I put these two together. They're not related, but what is the fan favorites?
So it was a notebook for school for students, and when you open it, it just has notes in it. Has a lot of I think on the back cover it has like measurements and ounces and kilos and tools that you would need to use for school. And then it has blank pages inside. This one here had been written in. Somebody started to do the homework in it on the first
Oh,
couple pages, but I found it very, very interesting, and it really wasn't too bad. I know I've had a Babe Ruth in a notebook probably 20 years ago, and it was even pricey back then. I can imagine what it would be now, but I always thought that these were pretty neat.
um, I've never seen one before. Oh. Viewers of this channel will know that I have an affinity for Cracker Jack cards, and I have about 10 of them at this point.
Yeah, and so do I. I do too. But this, I would love to get a hold of some other Cracker Jack cards, but this one was first priority. And I also waited probably a good 6 or 7 years of looking before I found this one. I was on a Facebook group, and a gentleman showed this card, and I inquired about it and asked him if it was for sale because he was just, admiring the card and posted it, just so other collectors could see it. And I contacted him about it. Well, we were able to work out a trade. I had a 1915 Tris speaker in a 5, and we were able to work out some cash and trade towards this 7 on the Joe Wood.
Yeah, the
I
7.
felt, real fortunate.
Unbelievable. Yeah, and it's the 15, so you got the upside down back, which you
Right.
I am in the Cracker Jack Facebook group, and there's some real true believers in there. And some of these guys think that the 15s are inferior, and some of them go as far as to call them reprints.
Right. Right. Well, it's obvious this one was not in a box with Cracker Jacks. This was a send-away one.
Yep.
But I think that's the beauty of having that option in the 1915.
And some of the cards are different. I mean, I think it's Mathewson has a different photograph is used in the 14 and 15.
Correct. Yeah.
Many of
There's
them
a
are.
portrait in the 15 and a gorgeous horizontal card in the 1914, which is extremely expensive.
I can only imagine. I haven't even priced it. But the difference, of course, is that the backs and the 14s are opposite way. I mean,
Right.
It's not technically upside down because you can flip the card forward and then you're in the right way.
Yeah, the 15 was designed so that it would be put into a new book that they had just came out with in 1915. And so when you turn the page, you could see the back of the card.
Right.
And it was upside down.
So now that we've seen true card porn, We're gonna try to go through some of these others. Cracker Jack 7, Doug. Seriously, I mean,
It's hard. It's hard to top that one. Yeah.
so Fleischmann's Bakery. This is I guess a Red Sox / Joe Wood pennant.
Correct. Yeah, they had all the major stars in this set.
Right.
I've had several. Over the years, I've had a Joe Jackson. I've had the Ty Cobb at one time, but these were when this felt pennant wasn't as popular, and we're talking 15, 20, maybe even 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And this was before they started encapsulating, SGC and started encapsulating. I think the only one that were encapsulating at the time was BVG. And they don't grade these, obviously. They're either authentic or they don't get encapsulated.
Right. And then there's the back. What's that writing on the back, the numbers there?
So this is the one and only Joe Wood that I've found that has the premium tag on the back, which are very, very rare. It's kind of up in the air, and I've done a lot of research on it, on what exactly those premium tags mean. I know I've seen the same premium number on other backs of the felts, but really no one knows what they're there for. But I know that they are very, very rare.
Well, I could say that they're there to drive the price up. That's what it is. So this is another Fleischmann's on the left.
Right. Yes.
What's the difference?
Exactly the same. Just they came in like 5 different colors.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Fleischmann also made cards. Big cards.
Correct. Yes. Fleischmann Bakery put out these cards in 1916. The difference is the Ferguson Bakery felts used the pictures from the M101 Sporting News.
Oh, Ferguson Bakery. Did I say Fleischmann's Bakery? It's Ferguson.
Actually, yes. Yeah, you're Ferguson, and then the one on the right is the Fleischmann.
Right is Fleischmann. Okay.
Yeah, but they also made a Fleischmann in 1916 card, and they also made a Ferguson Bakery card that looks exactly the same, except the tab at the bottom is a little bit different.
Right, because the tab has Fleischmann on it on that one.
Right.
Do you is it harder to find the card with the tab, or is it not?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Like most tabs, they were there for a reason. Usually people cut them off, send them in.
Yep.
And this was the same case. I think the pop on this is the only Joe Wood with a coupon on it. And of the 4 that have been graded, 3 of them have no tab, and this is the only one with tab.
Wow. Nice. Where'd you get that?
I bought this off of an individual I met him through Net54, but he has a online Tony E-Trade.
Oh yeah, okay.
And he has some of the rarest cards that are out there. And I was able to work out a trade. I probably gave a little much for this card in trade, but the card that I had traded for, I didn't have near the money in, so I decided that I'd rather have this card. And it was a T206 PSA 5 Trispeaker rookie. And I knew what I had in that card, and it had appreciated over about a 3-year period since I owned it. So I was able to give it up towards this car, and he gave me a little bit of money. But
nice.
I'd rather have this one than the T206.
Yeah, well, if you look at the pops, I'm sure you could find us. Yeah, I mean, you might not be able to find the 5, but
yeah, this was a 1 of 1, and it was kind of a no-brainer for me.
Yeah. This is also a very low pop, the Indianapolis Brewing of the M101.
Right. I think this has a total of 3 graded now.
So we're going to see this picture
A lot.
quite a bit over the next few minutes. So, uh, so here's 2. I think you gave me backs for these, but they were blank, so I needed to. That's
Right.
the M15, the Sporting News, which is a blank back, and then the Collins McCarthy, which I don't. Is that a blank back? Or I thought there was.
This is a blank back, which is
Okay.
extremely rare.
Right.
People get this one confused. If you look at the pop reports on them, the Colin McCarthy back, which is really popular, is has a lot more copies than a blank back.
Then the blank
This showed up in a 2004 auction off of eBay, and I missed out on it back in 2004. And I thought, well, it's a one of a kind. It will probably never show up again. And it showed up on Net 54 boards,
Wow.
and I was able to acquire it. So this is also a one-off card too.
The 7 on the left is, of course, a crazy high grade. I have quite a few of these cards because of I collect the 1914 Braves, and a lot of the 14 Braves
Right.
are.
Yeah.
And so I've got quite a few of these. When I say quite a few, I mean about 7. And I think 5 is my highest grade. Maybe even 4. I have to go back and check. But 7 is, again, kind of a unheard of.
Now this is the card that I had showed you at the Nationals.
Yeah.
But most of the time it has a print defect in the actual printing plate.
Yep.
That shows up on the face of the card. And this one here must have been a very early print run, and it does not have that typical print mark on it.
Yeah, the print mark
was very unusual.
Was like a black line that went almost from the top to the bottom of the card.
Right. I actually have
Yeah.
Some that are that way also. And it's pretty typical. It's very rare that you see one that doesn't have it.
This is the pictures of 80. Yeah, I have a couple of cards in this set. Certainly not have the wood. So this one, Herpelsheimer's. I know that Love of the Game did an auction, I don't know, maybe a year or 2 ago, with a ton of Herpelsheimer's. And I had asked you before we started recording if this was from that, and yeah.
Yeah. I seen a Herpelsheimer show up on eBay some years ago, and I inquired about it because I didn't know anything about them. And it was a one-off card. And the stigma at the time was, hey, is this just a promo card? You know, there's only one out there of anyone in the set. And so it ended up selling for pretty cheap, to be honest, because not a lot of people knew about it.
Right.
And then when I educated myself a little further about it, I realized how rare that card was. And last year in the Love of the Game auction, a new find of 38 cards had been found.
Right.
So I think they're now up to a count of 79 total cards in the set. And this is the second Joe Wood, and I believe there's 2 Babe Ruths now. So now it's noted that there's 2 of most of the cards now, and where before they thought maybe it was just a promo card, now they're finding out that they probably were distributed, but just in a very low number.
Right. So is this the card that was on eBay, or is that the other?
No, there's the other one was the one that was on eBay. It was actually a PSA 5.
Wow.
MK. It had a $ on the lower border in pencil. which most of them do. And you notice this one has MK qualifier also,
right.
but it looks like somebody tried to erase it
Yeah.
at some point.
Whoa, same picture.
Same picture.
The 575-1 hand cut, I believe, is the card that I had of this player, Joe Wood, and mine was, I believe, a hand cut authentic.
Right.
As you can see, this one got a grade,
which is weird because the 575s they're all hand cut.
yeah,
So,
but I mean, I think they give you a grade if your hand cut is, within the correct borders. I'm
right.
assuming that I had, if my recollection is correct, was cut like, the cut was not very good.
Gotcha.
And the borders
Right.
weren't even, so it looked hand cut, and it was probably correctly graded.
And this
but I
is
know what
pretty
I bought it for,
common.
I know what I sold it for, and I made money on it, so I don't.
Right.
I'm not hurt that way. But I knew that I needed a Joe Wood card, as we had talked about.
Right. And you wanted one for Boston, right? And this was the Cleveland.
Which is the Cleveland part of it was the why I sold it, not necessarily because I made money off.
But as you can tell on this card, they has the printing plate defect. So this must have been a later run on the printing plate, but that's pretty common.
And then there's the 575 H. Johnson. I don't know, wholesale confectionery.
Right. So you could order the cards if you were a vendor and have them come to you in blank backs. And then let me see if I can find the back of the card here. And then once the vendor got them, they could stamp them with their promo on the back.
Yep.
Let's see.
It's similar with the M101s. Some of them are printed on the back. Some of them are stamped. There we go. Let me see. We can get that. Right.
And it's in purple ink. And it just gives the name and address of the person that was distributing the cards.
Henry Johnson. Good for Henry.
Yep.
He's now has
now he's famous.
Truly immortal. So we're going to see two copies of this card. The 1922 E120 American Caramel, which has the team on the right. So what we didn't talk about much was the team itself. The Cleveland team did win a World Series.
They did.
Joe Wood appeared in that World Series, not as a pitcher, but rather as a hitter. I think he only had like 8 at-bats. But what's great about it is if you look through the team here, you got Stanley Kovaleski, Hall of Famer. And then you have, where is he? Bill Wambsgans, who is not most famous for, but pretty much only famous for the unassisted triple play, right?
Right, exactly.
In the World Series that they
won. It was
a
pretty good team. It was a pretty good team.
And of course, Speaker was the manager. I don't know if was Speaker still playing. Yeah, he was still playing.
He was player or manager. Yes.
Yeah, because he was still playing even after he left Cleveland. So this car, I love the sort of ornate, like the oval that the picture is in on these, which are pretty cool.
Right.
And then you have another one of these with an autograph.
I found that at the 2023 Chicago Nationals. Was not looking for this card at all. I had met up with another gentleman that I had done contact with off of a Net54 and Facebook. He found me and said, "You have got to go check this out." I'm not sure. I just traded this card to this gentleman, but I'm not so sure that he's going to let it loose. So he showed me where it was at, and I was able to work out a trade with him.
So was it a dealer that you got it from?
It was a dealer. Yes, it was a dealer. Yeah, but he loved this card so much It took quite a bit to pry it out of his hands. And I was just going to keep this one and not go after the other card. But when this one showed up, I said, that's just an awfully nice card. I'm just going to go ahead and get it.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this off camera, but the trading card thing is something that
yeah, I don't think PSA should really do that too much.
I think they stopped doing it, actually.
Yeah, they did. They did. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I had suggested, but I don't know. I mean, send it back to PSA and have them authenticate the card. They don't even have to. They don't have to grade the card. They can just say this is an authentic E120.
Exactly.
Auto.
There's no notification at all on the slab of what the card is, which is kind of annoying.
Yeah, well, I think somebody should have paid the extra $10 or whatever it is to get the card.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I have an auto of a card that it's not even a baseball card, but it says the name of the card on it, which is what I wanted. So it's not graded, and neither is the auto, but they're both authentic. This is the this is another 80. Okay. So what's the difference?
This is the 1922 one.
Okay.
And I think, is this the E220? Is that what that is?
This is the E122.
122. Okay.
Yeah. And so
that's a tough one too.
We've come to the end of our slideshow here. So I put two books in here, one of which, of course, we've talked about before, The Glory of Their Times, much recommended, both the book itself and the audio, which you can find of various players on YouTube. Fascinating book. I think that book has sort of been an influence, not just in baseball history, but also cards. Obviously, there's many different covers for this book. So I chose the one here, which has the T205s on it.
Right.
That kind of, represents the way that card collectors view this book as a way to learn about the players who are on these 100-year-old cards.
I can't say enough about this book. At the age of 12 or 13, you're still really impressionable. And I read the book, and I probably read it 3 or 4 times. And that wasn't a period of my life where I was reading a lot. It just grabbed me, and it stuck with me. I'm actually doing very slowly a Glory of Their Times on my channel.
Yep.
And I've done the Hans Lobert. I'm getting ready to work on some material for some other players, but just going to show the cards, show some audio and video from the book, and talk about some of the players in the book.
I was going to
I think it's just an awesome book.
Obviously, I'm going to link below to your channel, which I do for every guest, and ask people who are viewers of this channel to go over to Doug's, where your collection is broken up into many different videos. And it's not all Joe Wood, as you said. That Hans Lobert is in there too. The book on the right is a biography of Joe Wood by somebody named Gerald Wood. I don't know if they're related.
I've just recently purchased this book. I haven't got to read it yet.
Okay.
Well, I'm looking forward to that.
So there we go. So that's our Joe Wood show. Whoa!
Oh my gosh, it's awful. Please make it go away.
Yeah, go back. Oh man!
I have a brand new camera, and it looks like it has a mind of its own.
There we go. We're going back through. Well, we can leave this one up because this is the sexiest one as far as I'm concerned.
I agree. Yes.
So, really appreciate you coming on the show. Obviously, Doug. Also, will forever be indebted to you for the time and effort that you took at the National.
Well, Dan, I'm just going to say that was fun. I really enjoyed that. I like helping out other collectors, and that was part of the reason I started the YouTube channel And I know everybody hears this a lot in the YouTube community, but you can only have so many hobby friends um, at card shows and talk to them, emailing and texting. But uh, I wanted to have some more friends I could share things with, and so being at a card show, especially at the National, and helping out a fellow um, collector, that was awesome.
We did also meet previously at the Strongsville show, which I hope to see you at again in 25.
Sure.
So we'll spend some time walking around Strongsville and look out. Hopefully, I'll be able to find some cards for you at that one. So. All right, so viewers, I'm going to. There we go. I'm going to say goodbye to Doug. Again, sir, thank you. Your down below will be linked to your channel, and people will hopefully go and watch your videos, which are quite excellent. So,
awesome. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate you having me on.
All right. So, viewers, I don't have anything set up for next week, but I do have the Lefty Grove show coming up, and talking about doing a live show for the Carl Yastrzemski. And of course, I have the Shriner show coming up in the first week in November. So, things are going well in the channel. I would ask you to, if you don't already subscribe to this channel, subscribe to it. I have never asked people to subscribe before, but I'm coming up on 800 subscribers, and really happy about that. I'd like to get to 1,000 by the end of the year. But anyway, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you again next Saturday.